has continued uninterrupted since March 9th, 1933. We're coming up on a break. We'll be back here on The Real News with Barry and Brian after a word from our sponsors. We're back on The Real News, and we're continuing with our series, Constitution, A Search for the Truth. And again, I'm getting this information. A lot of this information came from Dr. Gene Schroeder and my research itself. So we're going to go back to Senate Report 93549. For everyone that's emailed me and contacted me and said there's absolutely no way this can be true, then I refer you to Senate Report 93549. And remember, this was produced in 1973. A majority of the people of the United States have lived all their lives under emergency rule. This is directly from that Senate report. For 40 years, freedom and government procedures guaranteed by the Constitution have in varying degrees been abridged by laws brought into force by states of national emergency. And in the United States, actions taken by the government in times of great crisis have, from at least the Civil War, in important ways shaped the present phenomenon of a permanent state of national emergency. How many people were taught that in school? How could it be possible that something which could suspend our Constitution would not be taught in school? Where does this come from? Is it possible that in our Constitution there could be some section which could contemplate what these previous documents are referring to? In Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution of the United States of America, we find the following words. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion the public safety might require it. Habeas corpus, the great writ of liberty, this is the writ which guarantees that the government cannot charge us and hold us with any crime unless they follow the procedure of due process of the law. The writ also says, in effect, that the privileges of due process of law cannot be suspended and that the government cannot operate its arbitrary prerogative power against we the people, but we see that the great writ of liberty can, in fact, under the Constitution, be suspended when an invasion or a rebellion necessitates it. In the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, it says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentation of indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in active service in time of war or public danger. We reserved the charging power for ourselves, didn't we? We didn't give that power to the government. And we also said that the government would be powerless to charge one of the citizens or one of the peoples of the United States with a crime unless we the people, through our grand jury, orders it to be done so, through an indictment or a presentation. And if we the people don't order it, the government cannot do it. If it tried to do it, we would simply follow the writ of habeas corpus. And they would have to release us, wouldn't they? They could not hold us, except in cases arising in land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in times of war or public danger. We can see here that the framers of the Constitution were already contemplating times when there would be conditions under which it might be necessary to suspend the guarantees of the Constitution. Also from Senate Report 93549, and remember that our congressman wrote these reports and these documents, and they're talking about these emergency powers, and they say they're quite careful and restrictive on the power, but the power is specifically contemplated by the Constitution in the writ of habeas corpus. Now, this is well known. This is not a concept that was not known to rulers for many, many years. The concept of constitutional dictatorship went clear back to the Roman Republic. And there it was determined that in times of dire emergencies, yes, the Constitution and the rights of the people could be suspended temporarily until the crisis, whatever its nature, could be resolved. But once it was done, the Constitution was to be returned to its peacetime position of authority. In France, the situation under which the Constitution could be suspended is called the state of siege. In Great Britain, it's called the Defense of the Realm Act. In Germany, in which Hitler became a dictator, it was simply called Article 48. In the United States, it's called the War Powers. If that was, in fact, the case, and we are under a war emergency in this country, then there should be evidence of that emergency in the current law that exists today. That means we should be able to go to the federal code known as the USC, or United States Code, and find that statute, that law, in existence. And if we went to the library today and picked up a copy of 12 USC and went to Section 95B, Exhibit 15, we will find such a law which states, the actions, regulations, rules, license, orders, and proclamations herefore and hereafter taken, promulgated, made, or issued by the President of the United States or the Secretary of the Treasury since March 4th, 1933, pursuant to the authority conferred by subsection B of Section 5 of the Act of October 6, 1917, as amended, 12 U.S.C. S. Section 95A, are hereby approved and confirmed March 9th, 1933, Section C1, Title I, Section 148-1. Now, what does this mean? It means that everything the President or the Secretary of the Treasury has done since March 4th, 1933, or anything the President or the Secretary of the Treasury is hereafter going to do, is automatically approved and confirmed, referring back to Exhibit 10. Let us remember that according to the Congressional Record of 1973, the United States has been in a state of national emergency since 1933. Then we realize that 12 U.S.C. Section 95B is the current law. This is a law that exists over the United States at this moment. On March 4th, of 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was inaugurated as President of the United States. Referring to his inaugural address, which was given at a time when the country was in the throes of the Great Depression, and we're going to play that as soon as we come back after the break. I don't want to start that. It's about 4 minutes long. We're going to play that after the next break. So, Brian, we're going through this. I know it's a little boring maybe to listeners reading all of this congressional record, but to set the framework of what we're trying to say, we have to do this. We're trying to lay the groundwork just like a lawyer in court. So we're going to go into the inaugural address of FDR, March 4th, where he's going to plainly tell us with his own lips, then we're going to dissect it. We've got just a minute or two left, Brian. Your thoughts on it so far?
So far, I mean, it's just when I had initially heard this back when we were discussing it, we were going to do a program on it. I mean, it's amazing. It's all right there. It's all laid out, Senate reports. All the information's out there that the Constitution was in fact suspended in March 1933. Emergency powers. We're practically in a state of war right now, according to these powers.
And we have diligently tried to find, because I wanted to find where the Constitution had been restored. And we're going to get into that a little later in this hour. But I can't find it. And this makes perfect sense. I know Mike, Al, several different listeners that have wanted the DVD and have watched it and have done their own research. This puts all the pieces of the puzzle in place. This is why the federal government can act as a dictator anytime they want to. They can bypass Congress. Our president, which of course is the puppet of the International Banking Crime Syndicate, he can bypass the Congress and can rule by executive order. We are one false flag event away, or any scenario you want to play out, from the government reducing us back down to serfs and total enslavement.
Even a real emergency.
Even a real emergency. I mean, this emergency was a depression, which we are in now, which is a real emergency. Even though the puppet media wants to say we are just fixing to go through the jobless recovery, we are in a recession, depression, whatever you want to term it right now.
Flu pandemic, anything's possible. Hurricane Katrina might have even triggered something like this.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we have states, or they declare counties a state of emergency. All right, we'll be back on the Real News after a word from our sponsors. All right, right, we are back on The Real News. TheRealNewsRadio.com is the website. We are going to be playing the March 4th inauguration of FDR. I urge everyone to listen closely to actually what he's saying and the ramifications that it has. Then we're going to be dissecting it a little bit while we continue on our Constitution, a search for the truth. So let's play that clip now.